Support comes from Hampton Roads Community Foundation, partnering with donors from all walks of life to improve southeastern Virginia through grants, scholarships, and leadership initiatives. Learn more at hamptonroadscf.org.
Hello, everyone. I'm Barbara Ham-Lee. The history of Black people and medical research is complicated. In the 1840s, Black enslaved women were subjected to brutal experimental gynecological surgeries without anesthesia. And then there was the Tuskegee syphilis study, when the U.S. Public Health Service tracked syphilis in 600 poor Black men in Alabama and denied them life-saving penicillin even after it was deemed the standard of care. Those are just two examples of why there is such distrust of the medical system within the Black community. Why does it matter? And what are the implications for today's clinical trials? Some answers when Another View returns, right after this national, regional, and local news from NPR and WHRO News.
Discussing today's topics from an African-American perspective, this is Another View.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Another View. I'm Barbara Ham-Lee. Before we get started, I always like to tell you about some great things happening in the community. And Zyder's American Dream Theater, or the Z as we call it, invites you to come out June 3rd through 7th of this year to the Vocal Jazz Summit. And it's also going to include a free concert, and Grammy-winning New York Voices will do their final tour. All of this will be happening in Virginia Beach, June 3 through 7. There's a variety of things going on. On June 5th is Songs of Home and Belonging with Matt Baker and Veronica Swift, and that is free for everyone. Kenny Washington is the acclaimed jazz vocalist on June the 6th, and there's so much more. Go to vocaljazzsummit.org if you are interested to find out more and to get tickets. And we want to please put this on your calendar right now. On Thursday, June 18th, our Juneteenth celebration here at WHRO and Another View will be happening. So we want you to come out, be a part of our live audience, and we are going to have a historian, we're going to have food trucks, vendors, there'll be children's activities by our education department and Miss Martha, Miss Martha reads, and so she's going to do some things with the kids, and there'll be tons of other things. It's free. We do like you to register. Please go to whro.org/events to sign up and be here from 11:30 in the morning until 2 o'clock, and you'll be able to eat lunch. You'll be able to watch us do the show live and participate in all the activities. So come on out. We hope to see you there. So on today's Another View on Health, overcoming Black mistrust of the medical community when it comes to clinical trials. Now, while African Americans make up 14% of the U.S. population, only about 5 to 8% of clinical trial participants are Black. Now, why does this matter, and what happens when Black people do not participate? Joining us to provide some insight is Dr. John Brush. He is Chief Research Officer of Sentara Health and Senior Medical Director with Sentara Health Research Center. Hi, John. How are you?
Very good, Barbara. Pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you for joining me. We appreciate it. Dr. Jennifer May is Research Manager, Office of Research Grants and Development with Sentara Health Research Center. How are you?
Great.
Good.
How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for being here. And Ashley Williams is a clinical research nurse specializing in critical care and clinical trials involving drugs and medical devices and everything else. How you doing, Ashley?
I'm doing well.
Good.
Hi.
Oh, man. With that soothing voice, I know you just make patients feel right at home. And, of course, my co-host for the hour, cardiologist Dr. Keith Newby, who serves as Hampton Roads Medical Group Cardiovascular Medical Director and Market Director Director of Community Health Improvement and Engagement, all with Bon Secours.
I'm gonna trim that down eventually. One of these days, I'm gonna trim it down. You doing okay?
I'm doing good.
Excellent.
And look, I got your full title now from your new bio as Director for ODU.
Okay.
So, you're just all over the place.
I know. What can I say?
Audience, I was telling Dr. Newby, I really would love to come one day and watch him operate, and he just started laughing. So I'll leave that where it is.
I'm gonna have her get up with me early in the morning and spend the day with me. I'd love to have Barbara hang out with me for a day. I think she'll have an appreciation of that.
I think we're gonna make that happen.
Yeah,
Then we can come back and talk about it on the show one day.
I look forward to that.
Absolutely. So, okay, clinical trials. Everybody's heard the term and so forth, but. And by the way, audience, the doctors have said I may call them by their first names. So don't yell at me because I don't say Dr. Brush or Dr. May. But John, tell us, what exactly is a clinical trial and why are they so critical?
So a clinical trial is where we test out whether a new drug or a new device works. Oftentimes, the clinical trial is an opportunity for a company to test the device or drug so that they could get FDA approval and turn it into a commercial product. Mm-hmm. So we're involved in a lot of multi-center trials where a study sponsor comes to us and asks us, would we be interested in participating in this particular trial? We may be one of 30 sites across the country or even across the world. Mm.
So they run the same trial across many different
run
groups?
By protocol exactly the same way every place, and it's very important to stick to the protocol and do it strictly according to the protocol. And most of those trials work by, they're called randomized controlled trials, where it's sort of like flipping a coin, but not exactly, but you randomize somebody between the treatment or a comparison group, maybe a placebo or nothing. And so what you're doing is you're trying to make that comparison in enough patients so that you can actually make a statistical evaluation about whether something works or not. And if it does work, then that company then would apply to the FDA for approval and then start selling the drug as a commercial product or the device.
So when you start, Jennifer, when the process starts, before it comes to testing on humans, is there a certain place it has to get to figure out that if we give a human this thing, they're not going to just expire right away?
Oh, absolutely.
You know what I mean?
With drug and device trials, they usually do animal research and even lab bench testing prior to getting to first in human.
Okay. And so it is relative. You've already figured out there's a relative safety issue before you start.
Absolutely.
Before you get started.
There's stages of trials. Early stages look at the safety and they try to work out the proper doses and those type of things. We get involved in some of those trials, but many of the trials that we are involved in are at a later stage where the safety issues and the dosing and those type of things are already worked out, but they're just working. They're called efficacy trials. Does it work or not? And that's what we're primarily involved in.
So what are some of the trials that you all are working on now? Either one. Or Ashley? Is there a trial you're working on?
Yeah, so I work with the heart failure population generally out of Centera's Heart Hospital, working on drugs and devices to help people manage that chronic condition. We have several mainstream clinical trials that we're working on now. We've even started doing some of those specialty groups of things called amyloidosis, which has kind of been something that people don't talk a lot about. We don't really know a lot about.
Is that ATTCRM?
ATTRCM, exactly. ATTRCM, cardiomyopathy.
I'm just thinking about the actor. That's the commercial. That's the only thing I know about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's gaining traction for a good reason, for sure. We are starting to do some of the cutting edge things. There's already a standard of care. Therapies that have gone through this clinical trial process and been approved, but some of our trials are looking to be the first to be tested and try to get that approval to to help people with those conditions.
So we know what it is and kind of how it starts to work. But why is there reluctance? Well, let me ask it this way. In this area, as you're doing your trials, do you find reluctance from minority communities, particularly African Americans, in terms of participating?
I would say probably yes.
I could probably chime in a little bit more on that one. Came out of a Duke's program as a fellow. There your thought process. You come to Duke University, you're going to get enrolled in a clinical trial. But people had that expectation going into that system. Here is different. When you're in community areas, the issue becomes people feel that they're just being experimented on. Based on, and sometimes it's legitimate concerns based on historical information, but I try to get people to understand that now in this environment, it's hard. It's hard to get clinical trials started and implemented because of the safety factors that have to be. It's so much that you have to do regulation that you run into, but a lot of it's just that trust, and it's hard when you have people telling you, don't do this, don't do that. I got patients that will tell, that family members will tell them, don't take some drug we've given them, who has no clue about medicine whatsoever, but they're listening to them because they say, I took this drug 10 years ago, I had 10 heart attacks. You'd be surprised the stuff people come up with. I'm like, 10 heart attacks? Are you kidding me?
And you're still alive,
but you'd be surprised. It's a trust factor majorly. And and when you think about it, most of the time you run into a situation, you're dealing with people you don't really know, because most people in clinical trials, they're not who you deal with on a day-to-day basis. You're being sent there. You have people you don't really know. They're telling you we're going to do this that sounds experimental, and there's a nervous factor. Think about COVID vaccines.
Yeah,
well,
I was going to say because that was one of the ones that you had to get people together really quickly. And to test it out.
And
right?
I tried to explain to people that this is the issue. They would say, "Oh, it came out too fast." I said, "Well, what's too fast? Define what's too fast. Do you want us to wait 10 years when everybody's already dead before we do this?" I said, "You have to look at what was the process that gets a drug FDA approved." Half the time it's red tape that was the delay. It's not the process of the actual trial basis. It's what it takes to get it approved. It sits on somebody's desk for months and months and months before it would go on to the next stage. So it wasn't that it was so much a shortage. They had to escalate the time, cutting out the red tape part of just sitting on somebody's desk for months.
But that didn't mean that they weren't doing the testing.
Right. They already did the test. All that stuff was already done. It's just people's perception. And really it boils down to trust. And that's really what it is. And when you think about it, I understand it though, and I think as one of the things with the Cetera group that I can honestly say, they take the time to really explain things really well, and they have that caring approach to make sure people understand all the dynamics, all the nuances, so that there's no hidden issues, with it when you go into a trial. All the things, they go into such detail, and that's really needed because that does help build that trust. But getting you to that first stage, to say, okay, I'm going to pursue this. Because if you really think about it, how do we make clinical decisions? A lot of people think we're just pulling stuff out of the air. All the decisions we make are based on data that have been done already. Yeah. And, you get it, like say for us in the American College of Cardiology world, which is our governing body, guys sit in a room every couple of years, and they look at all the literature and they come up with recommendations that we can use. If nobody's doing clinical trials, we would never know how to pursue the best treatment for individual patients. So that's where the importance comes in. And if there's not enough representation in our community, you lose what that value could be to our patient population.
Right. So I can hear, because it happens a lot on this show, where people on occasion will call in and say, you all always talk about race, and there is no race, and we're all the same biologically. If that were true, then why would it be necessary to test various groups of people to find out how medication works on that? So explain why that's not true.
So a number of things can affect whether a drug or device works in a particular person. And one of those things are socioeconomic factors. And so let's say, we try something, but a patient doesn't have the support system, or they don't have the transportation, or they don't have the ability to sort of to work through some of the difficulties in starting something new. We would know that in a particular population, maybe it doesn't work as well in a particular population compared to the general population. So it's really important to have representation of the African American community in clinical trials, so that at the end of the day we can say, yeah, we know that it works, and in fact we've done subgroup analysis to know that it works in African Americans as well. I think that's really, really important. If we didn't do that, we might be missing something.
So it is much more than the biological. It's the environment. It's the social issues. It's everything that you that folds into whether or not you might be able to participate.
Well, you think about look at it, say as a hypertension trial. Just throwing that out as an example.
Which you have going on right now, right?
If you have what impacts hypertension, well, lifestyle
Stress
is a big part of that. So if you think about where people live, what is their diet like? So say if you just have a group of people that you're looking at and you're doing a trial with, but that group of individuals has a certain lifestyle, that therapy may work good in them, but may not work good in our community because our lifestyles are entirely different. What our daily diet is like, what's our level of activity like, what is the things we do, what's our weight category. I mean, there's so many factors that cannot be taken into account if we're not participating.
In
that's
the
the thing when you talk about those factors that impact think about stress levels. If you have a population of individuals, say like that particular socioeconomic status is such that, say there's a lot of stress based on monetary concerns. They just don't have the resources, and that stress level that impacts that group of individuals. If you never know, again, you can be biased in terms of thinking that this therapy is going to work in everybody, but it doesn't. And then people get discouraged because then they participate. Say it's already approved. They get on this medication that worked like great in this other population, but it doesn't work well in this person. Then you start to lose trust because they say, well, it's not working with me. Yeah, but you didn't participate in this thing, so we don't have that level of understanding in this population of individuals that would help us make the best determination about therapies.
It's kind of like when I think about the GLP-1s that are out now. So it first came out as a shot. Now you have a pill. I don't know if they did any testing to see whether or not one method of delivery even is better than
it's
another.
Always going to impact. You think about first pass effect when you swallow a pill, it's got to go through the liver. So if it pulls out too much of the drug in the liver, then the amount that's going to be effective is going to be reduced. So again, there are factors with that as well, but they do have to go through that process and have to figure that out. It's just a matter of whether or not it can be applied to all comers. That's why the importance of this is so relevant, especially with hypertension. And I'll let them, of course, talk about that.
Hypertension is an interesting one. We know that hypertension runs in families, but if you look at the genetic studies of hypertension, genetic variation only explains a small proportion of the variation in blood pressure, a small proportion. We know that it disproportionately affects African Americans. African Americans have hypertension earlier in life. It's more severe, it's harder to treat, and they're more likely to have complications of hypertension. All kinds of problems. Ends up, we've done some studies where it looks like it really does relate to the social determinants of health, and those social determinants are also inherited. They're passed on from generation to generation, just like genes. But in this situation with hypertension, the social determinants may be more important, much more important than a genetic component.
So let's talk about the hypertension trial then, because obviously you had to get into the Black community in order to figure out how it was impacting the Black community. What did you do?
Absolutely. So we actually have great relationship with Dr. Newby and Iris Lundy, who works with Centera, and they do a lot of work in the community. And so we partnered with them and got introduced to quite a few different African American churches in the community in Hampton Roads. And we worked on building that trust and partnership, stressing it's a partnership. It's not one directional. We want there to be benefits on both sides. And from there, we were able to get in and talk in front of the congregations and at community health fairs, and build that relationship. What Dr. Newby said earlier was so important. It's all about that relationship and building trust.
And how long does that take? In other words, because say you get the grant, or a grant is coming to allow you to do this test, but yet, and let's take the hypertension as an example, but yet you knew that you had to build relationship before you could even get started. So, I mean, how do you balance all of that?
Gosh, we started talking about how we were going to operationalize this probably at least 6 months.
6 months before
we got started, maybe longer.
No, it was longer.
We went out to each church at least twice. The first time just to meet the pastor and some of the senior people at the church. The first time, we told them all about what we wanted to do. We didn't ask them to necessarily, sign our agreement at that time. We let them think about it. We communicated them. If there were any remaining questions, we talked with them more. And then we came back a second time, and we actually have a contractual arrangement between Sentara and these churches. They're using part of their time and space, and so they deserve to be compensated for that. And so we have a contractual arrangement with 11 African American churches. But what a privilege it is to be collaborating with the pastors and the senior leaders of these churches. What an enormous privilege to be invited to those churches, invited to the pulpit and talk about our study. And then the endorsement from the pastor is just such an important part of it, because
trust the community voice.
But we don't take it for granted. We do not take that trust for granted. We are very, very careful in making sure that we deserve that trust. We really work hard to make sure that we deserve their trust. So those collaborations, those partnerships, they happen at the speed of trust, and we're aware of that.
Got you.
And I would just add, it's not just we're coming in and doing the study at your church. We worked out, how is this going to best work? How should we roll this out at your church so it's most impactful? So
even between the churches, it might not have been the exact same way.
Customized our approach at each church depending upon what's convenient for them.
Yeah, and we also have Community Advisory Board. So we got input from the community as to how best to design this trial.
Ashley, when you work with the patients, because you work directly with the patients, right, in these trials, particularly the ones of color, what do they tell you about, why did they decide to get involved, or were they hesitant, before getting involved? What kind of conversations do you have with them?
It's, all around. There's times where a lot of those, past studies you referenced, Dr. Sims with the gynecological studies, the Tuskegee, I hear that a lot. A lot of times people may not even really know exactly what it was, but that distrust is enough for them to say they don't want to have any part of it. The beauty of research is the patient gets to choose how little or how much they want to do, and that doesn't stop with just signing a consent form. You can give me consent and say that it's okay to do this, change your mind at any time, and stop. And I think that helps them to know they are in control. It helps a lot to let them know that this is not a contract, you're signing something away. Signing your rights away is not happening. It's just giving us permission to look at what's happening. And at any point, if you feel uncomfortable, you can always stop. I think they typically love that portion of it.
Our coordinators are especially good at explaining the risks and the benefits and what exactly is going to happen. What are the expectations? and answering any questions that participants have before they sign that consent, allowing them to take the consent home and talk with their family members about it. We want to make sure that everybody is comfortable before they get engaged.
Obviously, for any of this statistical information to be helpful, we want for you to join and continue and do it so that we can have accurate numbers and accurate information. So we do that relationship that you guys are talking about, the consenting process, everything that takes, it's a relationship. You build up to that. You never want to rush it. You want to make sure they know exactly what they're signing up for.
That informed consent process may occur over several days, actually, making
before
sure
they make
and then they sign a form that's it's usually a lengthy document, and that form is approved by an institutional review board, so it's an ethical review board.
Is it something that you need an attorney for? I mean, because I'm thinking again, looking at barriers, because it sounds like it's kind of long and complicated. Is it not?
It's written in language that regular people can read. It's not legalistic, and so attorneys typically don't get involved in the representation. Okay. But if someone is a person who maybe is not able to understand it, then they need to have a legally authorized representative to sign it rather than the person. We're very, very careful on the process of informed consent to make sure that we do that in a way that's respectful, complete, thorough, explained well, but also, as Ashley said, the patient needs to know that the patient's in charge. It's ultimately the patient's decision.
Yeah. 757-440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240 are the numbers to call to join our conversation. We're talking about African American participation in clinical trials with Dr. John Brush, Chief Research Officer, Sentara Health, and Senior Medical Director with Sentara Health Research Center, Dr. Jennifer May, Research Manager, Office of Research Grants and Development with Sentara Health Research Center, Ashley Williams, clinical research nurse, specializing in critical care and clinical trials involving drugs and medical devices, and the co-host of the hour, Dr. Keith Newby, cardiologist, who serves as the Hampton Roads Medical Group Cardiovascular Medical Director and Market Director of Community Health Improvement and Engagement with Bon Secours. 757-440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. Have you participated in a clinical trial? Are you hesitant about participating? Call us and let our team tell you why you don't need to be hesitant, perhaps.
One of the things I would say as it relates to especially hypertension trials, in our community especially, one of the things, every time I lecture at churches or community events, one of the things I bring up is to look at complications of hypertension. Look at, most of the things that affect our community, they're asymptomatic. Think about diabetes for the most part, for most people, is asymptomatic, with the exception of people if the sugar is really too high or too low. Blood pressures, you got people come into the office with pressure 200 and feel absolutely nothing and feel fine. So the thing I try to emphasize to people is look at complication rates left untreated, and I challenge people, go to any dialysis center in Hampton Roads. I don't care where you go. I don't care if it's in a white neighborhood, black neighborhood, it doesn't matter. See who's the people in there getting dialysis. Guarantee is 99% are people. 99%. I have in my practice, I follow 9,000 people. I got 2 non-African-American patients on dialysis. Everybody else that's on dialysis is African-American. Wow. Why is that? Because we ignore stuff. Because we don't feel it, we blow it off. It's no big deal. I've had people tell me their pressure's 160. Well, that's good for me. I'm like, that's not good for anybody. But that educational piece, that's where I really like this study, because it really is, it's an intervention to help you, A, understand that you have hypertension, B, try to get it under control, and then seeing the impact down the road, how it's going to help. So there's not really an intervention in terms of some experimental thing. It's really getting you to understand what the issues are, where you fall in that, and to make sure your pressures fall into control range to help you get there so you can see the benefits down the road.
Is there financial compensation for this, for any trial, every trial?
Not every trial, but a lot of trials do provide some financial compensation for your time, and expenses to travel.
But it's not
that.
something where you would jump from trial to trial to trial because you think that's an easy way to make money. No, I mean, I'm just being real.
You're right.
Yeah, we don't want to entice them because of the money, but we want to compensate them for their inconvenience that participating in the trial would maybe incur. One of the things about our hypertension trial, we talked about recruiting patients through African American churches. The thing that we're testing is one, remote blood pressure monitoring. We give them a cuff that automatically connects with our electronic health record and reads their blood pressure in from their home several times a day or multiple times a week. So we get a much better idea of what their blood pressure really is. And we have a nurse practitioner who's monitoring that and can interact with them much more frequently than the standard way of coming back and seeing your doctor, in a month or a couple of months. And we're also testing out whether that plus a community health worker helps. So a community health worker, someone from the community that can relate to the patient, to talk about diet, to talk about lifestyle, to talk about maybe connecting them with resources in the area that might help them with their health issues, to see whether those two interventions improve blood pressure control rates, because that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to improve patients' blood pressure control rates at 6 months after intervening.
So clinical trials are not only for new stuff, but it's also a new way of looking at a current
It's a strategy.
issue,
It's a
strategy in order to help improve it.
Sure.
Improve it, absolutely. 757-440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. Elena joins us from Norfolk. Hi, Elena, you're on the air.
Hi, thank you so much for allowing me this opportunity. Kudos to you, because through your program, I was made aware of the local Vanguard multi-cancer detection screening research study. Ooh, a mouthful. However, I was able to participate. It was a wonderful experience. I became a minority subject. Fortunately, was in the actual test group. The results came back within weeks. Fortunately, again, I had a wonderful negative results, which was good.
Oh.
So I wanted to give kudos for that. Are you aware of that?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, we're just getting ready to talk about that study right now. So I am glad to hear that let me ask you a question, Elena, before we let you go. Were you apprehensive at any point, or did you think this could really help me?
I thought it could really help, actually, the Black community and Blacks of the diaspora.
Okay.
Because many people are very, very apprehensive about any of that. And I don't have those concerns, and I think we really need to come forward. I've volunteered as a kidney donor, and I do apheresis. And anyway, but yes, I think there needs to be more of us willing to participate.
Thank you so much for the call, Elena. We really appreciate it. Tell us, Jennifer, about the Vanguard
study.
Yeah.
So, Elena, thank you for putting your trust in us. That's actually one of the projects I'm working on. And the Vanguard study is looking at multi-cancer detection screening tests, which are these blood tests that can detect between 8 and 10 different types of cancers with one blood test. But we're still trying to see if they work, and how we can effectively roll them out in primary care, and if the benefits of these tests are worth the risks, because there are false positives, false negatives. And so with patients that are enrolling into this study, they're randomized into one of 3 groups. They can either get the Guardant test or the ClearNote test, or they're in a control group. And the control group, we still draw their blood, but we don't send it out for testing.
Gotcha.
And one thing to really know about randomization is you've got to be okay up front going into this, knowing that there's a chance that you might not be in the experimental group. And that's okay, and that's actually super important, because we need a comparison to show that these are working. But so for patients that are involved in this study, their enrollment, they come in, we meet them at one of our primary care practices, and we consent them. There's a short questionnaire. We draw their blood. We send it out. We give them their results within a month. If their results show as one of the cancers, then for Sentara, we actually pay for their diagnostic workup because they're finding out about this potential cancer through our study. But we work them up through biopsy, and then we would hand them off to a cancer navigator and specialist after that to take over. But the patients come back after a year, and we draw their blood again. We have another survey, and then they come back at year 2, and they have a survey after that. And then we can follow them in their medical chart for up to 10 years just to see their survival and if they've had any cancer diagnosis through that time.
How long has the test been going on now?
We have been enrolling since the end of June last year.
Okay. So it's fairly new.
Virginia was actually the first to enroll in the study.
Is it too late for others to join?
No, we absolutely need more people. We'll be enrolling at least through the end of the year, and we definitely want to make sure that everybody is represented in the study.
Wow. This is to me it's exciting, but I understand why people have some trepidation. What about the issue of bias on the medical team's side? In other words, you talked about going out into the community, going to the churches. You said it was an honor and a privilege, which is great. But for people who may not feel comfortable doing that or don't have as diverse a group of people working in research to be able to talk to others. So if you didn't have an Ashley or if you didn't have other people of color on your staff, is that a barrier? Or do you just expect communities to take you on because you're the doctor?
When I started this project where we were going into African American churches, I thought it would be a barrier. I didn't know how I would be received. People on the radio don't know, but I'm white, and I didn't know. I was blown away by the welcome. I was just blown away by how welcoming the pastors and the congregations were for us. And I guess we were successful at getting through. It
sounds like because you also had a sensitivity to the fact that you may not have been.
Oh my!
Whereas some people don't have that sensitivity.
I can't tell you how humble I was when I started this. When I went the first pastor I talked to was Dr. Jeffrey Guns at 2nd Calvary. Yes. And when I went in to talk to him, I told myself, I'm going to listen more than I talk. And I did that. And I just learned so much from Dr. Guns. He is an amazing man, and he's one of my heroes. And it was, I just told myself that, I've got more to learn here than maybe they do. And so it was with humility that we approached this. And I think that helped us create a relationship that ended up becoming a trusting relationship. But boy, before I went to the first church, I was nervous. I just didn't know how I would be received.
Did you open doors, Keith?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
I was debating what I was going to say. So Dr. Brush came to my church. I'm First Baptist Butte Street. Jerry Holmes is our pastor. And I was sitting up in the balcony because I'm a deacon there, so I have to, my territory is up there, so I'm watching John down there, and John's feet started moving, the music started playing, and I said, oh, John got some rhythm down here. And I think, but the thing is with him, all jokes aside, I think what happens is because he is very humble. He's a humble guy. He comes in and he does listen, but he could integrate in any situation and feel comfortable with that. And I think that's what endears people to him. And I've known John since I came back out of fellowship. And he's always been the same. I mean, I've never seen him different. He was very nice when I welcomed me when I first came back to the area. Just a nice guy. And I think that's what gets people that's that trust factor that comes in when they see your heart. And I think that's what I still pick with him about the rhythm thing, but in terms of him as an individual person, he's just a wonderful man.
Well,
but Barbara, it also takes a team.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Jen May has been an incredible leader on this, and Ashley and other coordinators who work with us. It takes a team, and so and all of us work together and work hard.
I will say though, I mean, we were lucky and very welcomed with the pressure check study. We were brought into the community. We developed those relationships. With the Vanguard study, it's more of a cold call. So we've put the information out there, but we're having to build the trust when people call us, say they're interested. And so I actually met with a local.
Because it's not kind of a core group that
right.
you could
Absolutely.
go to for blood. I
yes,
mean,
it's not
essence,
a community we're working with.
Yeah.
And so I actually met with the Community Advisory Board in Norfolk to talk about how we could gain trust and how we could invite more people, more representation into the study. And one of the things that they did mention was making sure that you had representation on your team, not just in your participants, but on your team, so that it can improve communication and cultural understanding. And some people are just feel more comfortable when they see diversity on this.
When they see someone that looks like them who says, this is okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I mean, one thing that's kind of interesting, though, is trying to get people to understand that piece of when you talk about like cancer rates. In our community, unfortunately, I see more people, it's like they're scared to find out.
Yes.
Because then that opens up a whole nother set of issues.
So some of it is trust, but a lot of it is just fear of the unknown. Mm-hmm. And people will say, I don't want to know. And you'd be surprised how much of that is prevalent. Now, you're a different sort, because I know you say, I want to find out if something's going on. I'd rather attack it early, which is the right approach. Yeah. But there are a group of people. I mean, I've had folks even who've had, open heart surgery for various reasons, and smokers, and still smoke after that, and still do the things they did that got them in trouble in the first place. And I'm like, that's not going to go away by you just because you got bypass surgery. That's not like a new lease on life to keep doing what you're doing. I said you should be grateful that you have this opportunity to get better. Now let's change the narrative. So
you don't want them to be like my aunt, God rest her soul, used to say, you got to die from something. Yeah. And so she would not let those camels go.
When they say that, I said, but you don't have to die today.
With their pressure check study, we've actually heard, not just individual stories about how we've helped people with their blood pressure, but how we've changed the narrative within the churches, that people are actually talking about their health and their health problems and working through them instead of being blinded to them or ignoring them.
Well, and that's what I was going to say. I've noticed, coming to the research side, in general, is that because it's all voluntary, we're asking people from that care, that just like you said, that care of going into someone else's space, getting to learn how, collaborating with them about what would work better for this. I find the same thing with clinical trials in general. You develop a relationship because you're doing this study or doing this over, it could be 2, 3, 4 years. You are following this person. This is something extra that even the patient, whether they're getting a placebo or not, that's a relationship. That's someone following them, that's someone they can confide in, that is in medicine, because that's not the time that, unfortunately, when you go to the doctor normally, you don't get to discuss everything and have that slow down of what you want. Right. Being a nurse, I know a lot of people may ask me about things that aren't about the study, but of course I'm going to help you or put you in the right direction for where you can. So that's something that I feel like, especially in the African American community, if you can find something and someone you trust in, you can take advantage of that situation as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. So one of the things you mentioned, so if the Vanguard study, for example, if the testing comes back and it's negative, you get a negative report, but maybe you find out later that wasn't correct from the testing. How you said you take them through and diagnostic and help them and so forth. What if you come to a test or a trial where you already have a known disease that is being tested on, and how do you guarantee that you are actually getting the new drug? Do you know what I mean? In other words, if you have a disease already and nothing else is working in terms of the medicines they're giving you and so forth, and they say, oh, but there's this clinical trial for this new medicine. How do you know if you're going to get the placebo or you're actually going to get that medicine because you need it, because you already have it?
One of the things I think is important is to explain to patients that if we didn't do a clinical trial, we'd be stuck. We wouldn't be able to improve medical care. And so they kind of need to buy in a little bit to the process. That for a randomized controlled trial, there's a 50-50 chance that they'll get the active drug versus not. But the thing is we don't know at this point that the active drug is going to work. We don't know. We're not going to take.
So it shouldn't be sold as here's this new miracle that might be happening.
That would be overselling, and that would be a mistake for us in the informed consent process to oversell what we just don't know. We continue all of the standard of care. Everything that's standard of care continues, and so this is in addition to what's standard, and so it is a trial. Does it work or does it not work? And the only way that you can figure that out is to compare it to a placebo or a sham procedure or something like that.
And I'll add to that too. With the Vanguard study, although we're providing these blood tests, we strongly encourage and ask them to continue doing their routine annual screenings, the mammograms, the colonoscopies. Those are show to work, and so we want them to continue to do that.
So this Vanguard testing, is this different from, you see commercials now for this blood test that they're supposed to test for all cancers kind of thing? Is that the same?
There are quite a few of them out there. They're not typically covered by insurance yet, but a lot of them you can get through your primary care office and pay out of pocket, but they're pretty pricey.
How does one get referred for a clinical trial? If you say does it have to come from your doctor to say, hey, I have this patient who is exhibiting these symptoms or has this disease or whatever it is, and I know you're looking for a trial, but if you don't get referred, can you pick up the phone and call somebody?
So it depends on the type of trial. Yeah. So a lot of our clinical studies do come through one of the physicians that are treating the patient, and they say, oh, we've got something that could work for you. With our Vanguard study, with our pressure check study, we're out there in the community recruiting people in. But still, people can go out to clinicaltrials.gov or go to Sentara's website and see what active trials we have going on. And you can go into Sentara MyChart now, actually.
That's what I was going to say. And you can say if you're interested in something.
It'll tell you what you might be eligible for.
Yeah.
And you can send a MyChart message to the research team and say you're interested.
I get them every day. People that are in their MyChart, playing around, and it'll say they are interested in this type of study. Now, they may not qualify, but that's helpful for us to follow up and say, hey, you expressed interest. Let's talk about it and see.
Wow. Oh, that's good.
And one thing that I'm not sure, I think Dr. Brush may have mentioned it, but a lot of people may not realize that in many clinical trials where there's an intervention like a drug, the researcher doesn't know what drug they're getting either. A lot of times it's double blind, so you'll have where the researcher doesn't know and the patient doesn't know. So that eliminates the bias aspect that can come into play when somebody's getting something. Sometimes and that's the thing, your human nature may dictate you may behave a certain way or do things a certain way because you know what that person is getting. That eliminates that part as well because nobody knows.
They have no idea.
Yeah, no idea. Neither party. I mean, sometimes they are double blind. Sometimes they're not, but a lot of times they are.
Yeah.
One of the things that's important for the community that's sort of a spin-off of being involved in clinical trials. Many of these things actually prove to be beneficial. Many of these things work. The devices, the drugs, they actually work. And because we have been involved in the clinical trial, we're comfortable with them. We're ready to roll them out. As soon as they get FDA approved, we're ready to roll. And so what it does for our community at large, it enables us to give them state-of-the-art medications and devices and treatments rapidly rather than waiting, seeing what someone else somewhere else proved to be beneficial.
We'll get it
we don't have to wait. We can just we can move right. So I think it helps our total. I like to say when I talk with Sentara folks about supporting research, I like to say research makes us better. It puts us right on the cutting edge of what medical care is all about. It helps us with evidence-based medicine that Dr. Newby was referring to earlier, and it helps us generate the knowledge that's necessary to take care of patients. We're in the knowledge business. Yeah. That's what medicine is. It's a knowledge business, and we're generating knowledge through research.
How do you know if a trial is legit?
Oh, we have to. We go through a scientific review. And generally, we insist that it's coming from a legit organization. If it's coming from somewhere that we don't know anything about who they are, we won't even look at it. And then we look at the budget, we look at the we look at the protocol, we look at the ethical considerations, the impact on the hospital and on usual clinical care. If it's a very disruptive thing that will, put everything upside down in the hospital, we won't do that. So we go through a very thorough evaluation. Our privacy department, our legal department, our compliance department, our risk department, all look at it.
So if someone is considering, Joe Citizen is considering a trial, do they look for organizations that already have that reputation that you were just describing? In other words, a well-known hospital or well-known operation so that they can decide whether or not what the work is being done is legitimate or not.
Yeah. You got to know that the hospital or the institution that's running the trial is trustworthy, right? And they're trustworthy because they've got experience. Mm-hmm. And they have all the mechanisms.
So you should do your homework.
You need to do your homework for sure.
Yeah. So, and doing your homework means when you go to that site and say the site again where you can find out about where clinical trials are happening.
Clinicaltrials.gov.
Okay.
Or Sentara.com/research.
And either one of those, what is there? A description of what the trial is and what's involved?
Description, the risks, the benefits, what locations have that study open. Yes. And then when the study closes up, they usually have results there as well.
Ah, okay. Yeah. Now, I noticed that you work with other hospitals and stuff from around the country. How does Hampton Roads stand up in terms of our results? In other words, do we go, we're Sentara and we got?
I think we're in pretty good standing with peer hospitals around the country. Mm-hmm. There's some places that are bigger, but there are a lot of places that are smaller. I think that we're sort of a medium-sized research organization. We're working to grow that and expand in other areas. We're really proud of what we've built and what we've sort of consolidated into a central trials office. And so we're really proud of where we are, but we want to continue to grow and expand for sure.
Well, I thank you all for sharing everything about clinical trials, helping us to understand what's been going on and what we can expect. And hopefully we will get more people. I remember, Jen, when you called in once when we were talking about and told us about Vanguard. And you could see one of our listeners actually took advantage. So maybe this time this will help people also feel comfortable. Thank you so much for joining me. I really, really appreciate it. And audience, as a reminder, it's important that African Americans participate in clinical trials. Without our participation, researchers won't know how new drugs and treatments specifically impact Black populations, which can further widen healthcare disparities. We don't want to do that. Share this show with a friend. Go to whro.org/anotherview or to your favorite podcast platform to find our program or any other Another View program. Next week on Another View, the difference the Boys and Girls clubs of Southeastern Virginia make in the lives of youth of color. Our theme music is an original composition created especially for Another View by Jay Sennett. Lisa Godley is our show producer. Jordan Christie is our audio engineer, and Dr. Barry Graham answered our phones. I'm Barbara Ham-Lee. Enjoy your weekend, everyone, and let's get together again next Thursday at noon for another view.
Support comes from Hampton Roads Community Foundation, carrying out your charitable wishes forever, whether it's helping shelter animals, feeding the homeless, enhancing the arts, or supporting students. Learn more at leaveabequest.org.